The Senate will come to order. Mr. Carpenter, please call the roll.
Senators Aguilar. Aguilar.
Excused.
Baumgardner. Cook. Corum. Court. Crowder. Donovan. Finberg. Fields. Fields.
Excused.
Garcia. Gardner. Guzman. Hill. Holbert.
Excused.
John. Jones. Kagan. Kufalis. Kerr. Lambert. Lumberg. Marble. Martinez Humenick. Merrifield. Moreno. Neville. Priola. Scott. Smallwood. Sonnenberg. Tate. Todd. Williams. Zinzinger.
Excused.
Mr. President.
Here. With 31 present, 0 absent, please ask Senator Zinzinger to the roll. With 32 present, 0 absent, 3 excused, we have a quorum. Colleagues, as you may be aware now, we have some special guests with us. The Honor Guard of the Colorado Professional Firefighters will present the colors. Please stand.
Goes left, march.
Please remain standing. I believe we have the national anthem that will be presented by, no. Mr. Assistant Majority Leader. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we suspend Senate Rule 1B for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To allow someone other than a senator to say the pledge. Folks, that is the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Rule 1B is suspended. We have with us today Erin Bargman. She is 40 years old and lives in Host Home in Lakewood. She enjoys bowling with Special Olympics and watching WWE wrestling. She is actively engaged in politics and ensures she is well informed about all candidates' amendments and judges. She looks for individuals who share in her values and belief systems. She likes to take charge and advocate for herself and others in the IDD community. She's been involved in several committees and rallies in the fight for IDD services and other issues. Erin is a part of the Laridon Officers, which is a self-advocacy group. Welcome, Erin, and please lead us in the pledge.
Will you please stand up on the pledge allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the to the republic that which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Erin. Senator Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. President, and colleagues, thanks for allowing our firefighters to join us this morning. I would request a moment of silence for the fallen firefighters who have died not only in Colorado, but throughout this great nation serving on our behalf.
We will proceed to a moment of silence upon the senator's request. Would you like the chimes to ring out as well? And then I believe during that moment of silence, we will have another number by our bagpipes. So please join me in a moment of silence. Colleagues, would you join me in giving them a hand? Approval of the journal, Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning. I move that we dispense with the reading of the Journal of Tuesday, February 27th, 2018, and that it be approved as corrected by our most excellent Secretary of the Senate and her even more excellent staff.
You've heard the motion. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the motion is adopted. Committee reports.
February 27, 2018, Committee on Finance. After consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 179 be referred to Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation. February 27, 2018, Committee on Finance. After consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 137 be postponed indefinitely. February 27, 2018, Committee on Local Government. After consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 174 be referred to Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation. Recommendation be placed on the consent calendar.
Senate Services.
Correctly printed, Senate Joint Resolution 6, correctly engrossed, Senate Bill 62, correctly re-engrossed, Senate Bill 2698 and 156, correctly revised, House Bill 1048, correctly re-revised, House Bill 1010, 1023, 1024, 1026, 1027, 1039, 1105, correctly enrolled, Senate Bill 124 and 148.
Message from the House.
The House has passed on third reading and transmitted the revised order statutes House Bill 1180, 1196, 1008, 1017, 1025, 1049, 1145, 1029, 1191, 1018, amended as printed in the House Journal February 26, 2018. The House has passed on third reading and transmitted the revised order statutes House Bill 1146, 1112, 1228, 1046. The House has passed on third reading and returns herewith Senate Bill 148, 124. The House has adopted and returns herewith Senate Joint Resolution 5.
Message from the reviser.
We herewith transmit without comment House Bill 1046, 1112, 1146, and 1228 without comment as amended House Bill 1008, 1017, 1018, 1025, 1029, 1049, 1145, 1180, 1191, and 1196.
Please add Majority Leader Holbert to the roll. Assistant Majority Leader Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege by Senator Smallwood.
The motion is to proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege by Senator Smallwood. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and we will proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege by Senator Smallwood. Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a moment of personal privilege to present a tribute.
Granted.
Thank you, colleagues. Wanted to read this tribute to you out loud. Convened in the second regular session of the 71st General Assembly. People with intellectual and development disabilities, IDD, are defined by their strengths, abilities, and inherent value. With appropriate resources, services, and personalized support, they make decisions about their own lives and contribute to their communities. Community living is a fundamental moral, civil, and constitutional right for people with IDD. IDD advocates or advocacy organizations, clinicians, researchers, policy analysts, community-based service providers, case managers, and direct support professionals work in partnership with people with IDD, parents, families, the legislature, and state agencies to strengthen the service delivery system so people can live productive, healthy lives in the community. This is on the request of myself, Senator Jim Smallwood, and my colleague from Denver, Senator Irene Aguilar, given this 28th day of February 2018, signed by our own Kevin J. Grantham, President of the Senate. And colleagues, I believe we're joined today, both on the floor and in the gallery, by some members of the Alliance, by the ARC, and also by the University of Colorado. And I just want to thank those people for their hard work and dedication. Thank you, colleagues.
Assistant Majority Leader Scott.
Mr. President, thank you. I move that we again proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege for our Majority Leader, Senator Holbert.
Motion is to proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege by Majority Leader Holbert. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and we'll proceed out of order. Majority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this is less a personal privilege, but more an administrative opportunity.
Would you like to ask for a moment of personal privilege, Mr.
Mr. President, I ask for a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, it's my privilege to introduce to you the new Legislative Human Resource Administrator, Mr. Ben Fitzsimons. He is available to you as legislators, legislative staff, aides, and interns for questions or concerns about the workplace environment. Regardless of whether you are in a management or supervisory role or in an employee role, Ben is available to you to discuss any personnel issues, including any workplace harassment issues that may arise. If someone has a workplace harassment complaint, Ben can help facilitate the process for addressing the complaint through the existing workplace harassment policy. Ben's office is currently in the Office of Legislative Legal Services in room 91, located in the south end of the basement. He will also have some regular office hours in 1525 Sherman in a space yet to be determined. If you have any questions or concerns about workplace issues, please feel free to talk with Ben. And members, would you please offer a warm welcome to Mr. Ben Fitzsimons.
Third reading of bills, consent calendar. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title to all the bill on the third reading of bill consent calendar?
House Bill 1048 by Representative McLaughlin and Senator Quorum concerning the expenditure of money from the Hesperus account by the Board of Trustees of Fort Lewis College.
Assistant Majority Leader Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1048 on third reading and final passage consent calendar.
Motion before the body is the adoption of all the bill on the third reading of bills consent calendar. Are there any no votes on any of the bill on the third reading of bill consent calendar? With 33 ayes, 0 noes, or absent to excuse, House Bill 1048 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senator Kafalis, Senator Merrifield, Senator Jones. Co-sponsors on House Bill 1048 is where we are at. Senator Crowder, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Tate, Senator Todd. Are we awake? Third reading of bills, final passage. Assistant Majority Leader Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 062 and ask that it be laid over till Thursday, February 29th. I'm sorry, good grief. I knew I'd get nailed on that one. Should we do a redo on this one, Mr. President? I think we should.
Would you like to withdraw that motion and start over?
Mr. President.
Assistant Majority Leader Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. We would like to lay over,
Move.
and I'll withdraw that first motion since I don't have any idea what the 29th of March really or the 29th of February looks like. But I'm going to move to lay over Senate Bill 62 to March 1st.
The motion is to lay over Senate Bill 62 till tomorrow, March 1st, 2018. Anno Domini. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that will lay over until tomorrow. Consideration of resolutions. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title to Senate Joint Resolution 6 by Senators Garcia and Hill?
Senate Joint Resolution 6 by Senators Garcia and Hill and Representatives Exum and Pabon concerning the commemoration of the 100-year anniversary of the International Association of Firefighters.
Senator Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. President, and we move Senate Joint Resolution 6, and has to be read at length.
Mr. Carpenter. Colleagues.
Senate Joint Resolution 6 by Senators Garcia and Hill and Representatives Exum and Pabon concerning the commemoration of the 100-year anniversary of the International Association of Firefighters. Whereas the International Association of Firefighters, IAFF, was founded 100 years ago on February 28, 1918, in Washington, D.C., when 36 delegates selected from 24 local organizations gathered to attend the first IAFF convention. And whereas the IAFF was established to meet the needs of the emerging firefighting profession, whose individuals had previously been operating unpaid for their services until the 1850s, and without safety and operational standards. And whereas, at the start of the IAFF, firefighters worked 24-hour shifts on continuous duty for very low wages, and the IAFF worked to establish better working conditions, benefits, and fair wages for firefighters, and also created the Firefighters Fund to benefit the children of fallen firefighters. And whereas the firefighting profession became a dependable job during the Great Depression of the 1930s, and during that time, firefighters benefited from improvements in safety technology, including the two-way radio, improved breathing equipment, and modern fire apparatus. And whereas, in 1934, 16 years after its creation, the IAFF was praised by the National Fire Protection Association, the United States Department of Agriculture, and other groups for playing a crucial role in fire reduction, education, and research. And whereas, when the United States joined the Allied forces and entered World War II, IAFF firefighters willingly served their nation and were uniquely equipped to do so. And whereas, the December 1941 issue of the IAFF's Firefighter magazine declared to its members, "The firefighters of the nation, in particular, have a distinct service to perform. Already well organized, trained, and accustomed to discipline and the orderly performance of their duties under any and all conditions, and with complete disregard of any personal danger, firefighters may be expected to set an example of their fellow citizens in the trying days that lay ahead." And whereas the IAFF helped coordinate members during World War II to ensure firefighters were available to help both at home and on the front, and when firefighters returned from war, the IAFF worked to ensure members would return to their firehouses and that disabled firefighters could find positions in the fire service. And whereas the creation and development of the Emergency Medical Services, EMS, in the 1960s was ushered in with the support of the IAFF, and today the IAFF Fire and EMS Operations GIS Department provides comprehensive information on fire departments and fire-based EMS and promotes appropriate staffing and deployment for fire suppression and effectiveness of fire-based emergency medical service systems. And whereas the IAFF has also stepped up to help during tragedy, in addition to providing logistical support at Ground Zero after 9/11, the IAFF sent stress management teams to aid grieving members and their families, and in 2002 distributed more than $96 million to the families of firefighters killed in the attacks. And whereas in the aftermath of 9/11, IAFF leadership participated in the creation of the Department of Homeland Security and ensured that firefighters would have prominent roles within the department. And whereas the members of the IAFF are also on the front lines of national emergency response, including hurricanes and natural disasters, and contribute time and resources to international charity efforts that better the lives of children and families. And whereas today, the IAFF continues to be the primary advocate for providing firefighters and paramedics with the tools they need to perform their jobs and protect over 75% of North American citizens. And whereas the IAFF has been the leader in the advancement of improving the service firefighters provide and the livelihood of the members who risk their lives to keep our communities safe. And whereas it is fitting that we honor the IAFF for their contributions and commemorate their 100th anniversary. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 71st General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that we, the Colorado General Assembly, congratulate the International Association of Firefighters on their 100 years of service to the brave men and women in the firefighting profession and their families. Be it further resolved that copies of this joint resolution be sent to IAFF General President Harold A. Shadeberger, IAFF General Secretary Treasurer Edward Kelly, IAFF 9th District Vice President Ray R. Rain, and CPFF President Michael Frenier.
Senator Hill.
Thanks, Mr. President. Colleagues, I ask you to be seated, if you so choose. 100 years. 100 years is what we are celebrating here for the IAFF. And 100 years, a centennial anniversary, is probably pretty special for us here in Colorado, as we're the centennial state. 1876, Colorado becomes a state 100 years after 1776. 100 years ago, 1918, we were still in the throes and the horrors of the stalemate in World War I, and how distant and how far away that seems. And there's also something special personally about 100 years. We celebrate those few in our lives that we know that live 100 years old, centenarians. Just recently, we celebrated the success of Pearl Harbor survivor, Jim Downing. We named a bridge after him in Colorado Springs, I-25 and Cimarron, that new bridge. And he recently passed away. There is something deeply significant, dare I say magical, about 100 years in our lives as humans and what that looks like. Colleagues, every organization out there that's formed to address a problem looks forward to the day when that organization is no longer needed. When I worked at Compassion, we worked on children's poverty issues. We longed for the day when we were no longer needed to address children's poverty issues because we had solved most of those. And there is a unique success that the firefighters have seen over the course of our nation's history, especially over the last 100 years, where in so many cases we cannot any longer fathom what it was like to go to bed at night with the fear that something might burn down over the course of the night. That our firefighters, through their expertise, through their advocacy, through our fire codes, have drastically eliminated the risk and the threat and the fear that we face from fire. As such, their profession has changed. Their profession has changed significantly. They've become a far more technical, far more professional organization, and we have the IAFF to thank for much of the safety in which we sleep every night. If you get a chance, do read some of the histories of the fires that we have faced here not just in Colorado, but in the United States, whether it's the Great Chicago Fire back in 1874, and fires on and on. There is just a rich history of heroism, of triumph, of rebuilding, of examining what loss looks like and what it looks like to bond together over these instances. We got a taste of that. We got a taste of that in the Waldo Canyon fires. We got a taste of that in the Black Forest fires. And I think there's something unifying about these stories, about the heroism of our firefighters, about ordinary citizens that we miss and we need, I believe, in our modern society. There's a heroism that continues to inspire to this day, especially young boys. I know there are young girls out there that aspire to be firefighters, but every single parent is delighted when their son or their daughter says at some point, "Hey mom, hey dad, I want to be a firefighter someday." There's a richness to that. And I think lest we believe that what we are doing here with this resolution is letters to Santa Claus as just one more bit of pomp and circumstance that we do up here, that there is actually something much deeper that we are accomplishing here. And I think we could all feel it when we heard those bagpipes pipe up. We could see it when they walked in, when we had that moment of silence, and whether you look down or you look around and you see these kilts and these funny hats and the get-up and the golden axe and all this ceremony, and you realize that wasn't extraneous. The preparation and the work and the history and the culture that goes into that creates an experience, creates a sensory experience that drew us all together. And I know every single one of us could feel that we could feel the sense of fraternity, of brotherhood, the sense of sorority, of sisterhood that I believe in our very divided society right now, in our polarized society right now. I believe there was a sense there that said there is something bigger than us. There is bigger than us as individuals. There was a sound that filled the whole room and transcended not just what we do here, but gave it a sense not just of ritual, but indeed of sacrament. And so with that, Mr. President and colleagues, I appreciate your willingness to listen a little bit, to celebrate and to share in the richness of 100 years of IAFF, the successes that they have seen, the stories of heroism, the stories of loss, and the opportunity I genuinely believe that bonds us together in a polarized time. I believe this is one of these areas that pulls us back together and unifies us on this idea of there is something indeed bigger than ourselves, bigger than us as individuals, bigger than us as a single generation that points past generations and future generations and us today and brings us all together. So I'm honored to bring this with my co-sponsor, Senator from Pueblo, and appreciate your attention and your focus on this ritual, this sacrament today.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I rise in support of Senate Joint Resolution 6 today. A couple of things I want to highlight in here about in the aftermath of 9/11, the IAFF leadership participated in the creation of the Department of Homeland Security and ensured that firefighters would have prominent roles within the department, and that the IAFF continues to be the primary advocate for providing firefighters and paramedics with the tools they need to perform their jobs, and that the IAFF has been the leader in the advancement of improving the service firefighters provide and the livelihood of the members who risk their lives to keep our communities safe. I felt compelled to rise and support this resolution verbally. It's not often that you get a chance to thank people who have been there, the actual individuals who have been there at the other end of that 911 call, and there are folks that we're honoring here today who have been to my house, not just for emergencies, but also one of the great services I know that the West Metro Fire Department provides is that if you're having a block party or a neighborhood gathering, is that they will come by, if they're not busy with some other things, they will come by and park their truck in the middle of the block and let the kids come and poke and prod and look at their trucks and answer all sorts of questions. And so that's, I like to thank, and I won't call anyone out by name who I might be talking about, but his name is actually the final two words of this resolution, if you'd like to know who I'm talking about. I will warn you, though, those of you who will be standing for re-election, is that if you invite the firefighters to come to your block party, that they will, and it's during campaign season, they will count the number of your yard signs and the number of your opponent's yard signs on your block and let you know exactly how many of each, and if they're disappointed in that number. So with that, thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of SJR 6.
Senator Kafalis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I too rise in support of SJR 006, and I want to extend my genuine gratitude to the firefighters assembled here. Back in May of 2015, I was visiting family in New York City, and I went to visit the museum there at Freedom Square. And if you've not gone to that museum, I encourage you to go, because there's a good portion of it is dedicated to the firefighters who lost their lives at 9/11. And I'm looking at I think it's copper or bronze. There's a plaque that is on the wall there by the museum in Freedom Square, and it basically says, dedicated to those who fell on 9/11, but also who carry on. And when I was growing up in New York City, the local fire station was a big deal. It's kind of like the good senator from, where is he from? Well, you know where he's from. But it was a big deal, and back then we referred to firefighters as firemen, and I'm glad that that has changed, and we've created more opportunity for women to serve in this really important role. I'm still looking to go for a ride on one of the fire trucks, appropriately, a ride-along in the Poudre Fire Authority, and I have talked to Fire Chief Tom DeMint, saying that I would be happy to do that if we can work out the details, but I would really like to ride with one of those Dalmatians, but I don't think you all use those anymore. So I rise in support, and I commend you for your service, and thank you very much.
Senator Martinez-Humenick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too rise in support of Senate Joint Resolution 6, and I just want to tell everyone here that serves our communities, not just here within the metro area, but statewide, thank you from the bottom of our hearts, because people don't realize that you don't just fight fires. You go into water rescues. You go into buildings that may be collapsing. You help other jurisdictions and other states fight wildland fires. There's a lot of things that firefighters do now that were not typical back in the early 1900s. And back in the early 1900s, it took communities lining up, passing buckets of water along to put out fires. And thank goodness we've come a long way from those days and have much better trucks, much better opportunities to get to high-rise buildings, which now we have a lot of in Denver. So, and we're gonna see probably more of those in some of our suburb communities. So I just wanted to say thank you very much. I appreciate the work that you do every day. People don't realize that along with our police officers, you're a first responder, you do put your lives on the line every day when you go out to an emergency, because you never know what's gonna happen. So I just wanted to say thank you, and this is awesome that it's been 100 years that we've got this whole group together. So really appreciate all the service that you have done, and I also am very excited to see more women joining the firefighter ranks. I know this can be very rigorous. I actually went to my local fire department, put on all of the equipment plus the air tanks, and had the axes and everything else that certain people have to carry, and I could barely walk. So I commend you guys for being able to go into these situations with 80 pounds of extra equipment or more, and really appreciate that you, like our police officers, move into dangerous situations rather than out, and you have that compassionate nature as well as those emergency services, and you're highly trained to help our communities. So thank you very much.
Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. President. The firefighters of the nation in particular have a distinct service to perform. That really caught my eye. I believe with your history, you do more than just fight fires. You help hold the fabric of this country together. You symbolize what the goodness of this country does offer. I think that it's vitally important that as a small grade school student, I do recall the firemen plastic hats, Fire Prevention Week. But I think what has happened, you have become an icon within the communities that you serve, and I think your involvement in building a nation should not be overemphasized, because I think you are a very large part of what we adhere to. And that's a goodness of your service. But I think for what you stand for should be continued. I do believe that we're looking at a drier months in Colorado where we may call upon your resources to help us out again this year. But I think that the debt of the country to you should not be, we do owe you that debt for what you've done for society, for what you've done for your service, and what you've done for yourselves. Again, I thank you for being here, and I am in support of this Resolution 6. Thank you.
Senator Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. And members, I rise in support of SJR 006, and want to thank our senators from, let's see here, Colorado Springs, both of them, in bringing this resolution today. And I just want to say thank you for the work that all of you do in our communities, in our state, and in our country. And not only do you ensure that you keep our communities safe, but I also admire your contributions to the community. A lot of us enjoy the big chili cook-off that you raise money for down in Larimer Square. You're always working to help other organizations. And we also enjoy your calendars. And so I just wanted to know if your calendars have been in existence for 100 years. But thank you for your service. Thank you, Mr. President.
On that note, Senator Guzman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I grew up in a small town in Texas, and there were the days when if you didn't have at least 12,000 people in population, that you had a voluntary fire department. And the voluntary fire department took care of our families and our communities for many, many years. My mother lived in a rent house adjacent to the fire department. And she had emphysema, and she would always call on them when there was something wrong with her piece of equipment. She couldn't breathe, and she would call these guys, and they got to know her fairly well. She would call them often. They'd go into the home and take care of her. But then there were those times where she would call them, and they'd get there, and they say, well, Miss Guzman, there's nothing wrong with this. Everything's working. And she'd say, oh, okay. Well, then could you go to the Sonic and bring me a hamburger? And these guys would do that. They would go and get my mother a couple of hamburgers because she loved hamburgers. And they played a major role in my family, taking care of her, and were always never turned her down. And that's one of the reasons why at her funeral they were picked to deliver and read some of the scriptures that were there. But the firefighters in my hometown were like ministers, if you will. And many of them, especially when there were the volunteers, they left their families at night, tried to keep farm barns from burning down, even rescued animals, and also helped. There were no EMTs at that time, years ago. So they became those EMTs, and they would go to the local highway and see who was hurt and help in that way. But I think this country owes a great deal of debt to the firefighters, not only in the more recent times in 2011, when so many gave their life, but to the firefighters who are always there to serve, no matter what, and who have done tremendous things for not only individuals, but have made communities far safer. So I'm glad you brought this and recognized the firefighters for all these years.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I too rise in support of this important resolution. And it was brought very close to home about 18 months ago when there was a fire in my district at Heather Gardens Retirement Center, and Aurora and Cunningham fire departments came together to work on making sure that there was security and that there was safety for the senior citizens. The fire broke out in one of the condos. It spread throughout an entire floor. And what happened is that there was a failure of being able to, because they had not used some of the connectors with the hoses, that they had to resort to a lot of different creative ways of getting the fire extinguished. The smoke damage obviously created a problem in being able to use the elevator anymore. And so as a result of that, trying to get 12 families off of 6th floor without using an elevator and having to resort to other ways of being able to get them released, and also without the smoke damage, to their lungs to get out and to get down. The tenacity and the integrity of each and every firefighter that was there as the fire broke out and then as it continued, and waiting to see how they were going to be able to get each person out that had resorted to going out onto their lanai, out onto their deck, to get away from, and being able to get the ladders and the entire process of from one end of the 6th floor to the other end. These folks survived with the exception of one person and one little dog. But other than that, every other person was rescued, and there was not a sustainable smoke damage to any of them. I want to applaud and thank you for your selflessness and for your dedication. And service above self is definitely your motto. You are our heroes, and we thank you, and thank you very much to the two good senators for bringing this important resolution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Lambert and Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to add a little color to the situation here, and I'm sorry this is black and white, but this is a picture that's been over at the Joint Budget Committee for as long as I can remember. It used to be the centerpiece behind the chair and the vice chair in that room until we redecorated a couple years ago. But this is, I wanted to bring it up because this is the 100th anniversary of the organization. This picture was taken in 1915, so it's just slightly older, but it's contemporary with the start of the men and women who started this organization. Well, the fine print says something about San Francisco. We're going to disregard that. But remember, some of those firefighters actually, I grew up in California, and my relatives, I mean, they still have the muscle memory of remembering the San Francisco earthquake, which was kind of like Mrs. O'Leary's cow in Chicago. The fire was all-consuming and caused tremendous damage to the city of San Francisco. So firefighters at that time, before there was an international organization for those kinds of safety standards, I also heard lots of stories about things that went wrong during the San Francisco earthquake. So it's very, very important to have those standards, have standardized training and things like that, and probably a lot of that grew up out of the San Francisco earthquake and fire. But this, you can see, these are, in the military we'd say they're damn proud troops, because they have the symbols of firefighting, the axe, everything like that, very similar to the traditions that we saw this morning of pride, of intent to serve, and of course, remembrance of those who have gone before. One of the things that was read in the resolution was also talking about preparation for war. And we kind of lose that today. I had the opportunity, I think it was in 2000, to go to London, and I had some, believe it or not, free time on my hands, so I went over to the British Military Museum, and they do it right. They have huge museums, tremendous respect for their military history and heritage. But the British National Museum at that time was putting on a special exhibit dedicated to World War II, the Civilian Defense Corps during the Blitz. And we probably have some younger students here, probably never heard of what the Blitz was, but for many years, Germany bombed the city of London. And there was constant attacks on the civilian population of London. Bombers, V-1 buzz bombs, V-2 intermediate range missiles, simply with the intent to drop bombs, drop warheads on the city of London. there's a very special statue, memorial statue to those firefighters, brothers in arms, you might say, where they list names, and there's it's like a bronze statue, if I can describe it that way, with firefighters saving people from the flaming wreckage of London buildings. And on that statue, it's very similar to the Vietnam Wall in Washington, D.C., hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of names of firefighters who lost their lives rescuing others from the Blitz. It's, if you ever get there, or Google it now, I guess you can see this, very appropriate that firefighters should be thinking about that, because they were of course, here in the United States, we have the Civil Defense Corps, and firefighters were the key element of that, volunteers who would prepare and train in their local communities with lights-out raids or lights-out procedures in case of bombing raids. And this was very, very real to the people, especially in our coastal areas during World War II. So this became part of American culture as well, and I think that's why it's reflected in the resolution. But it's very appropriate, very important that we remember our historical legacy of firefighters who have not just risked their lives and paid a sacrifice, but day by day, whether they're firefighters or EMT or civilians who have accepted training as volunteers, to remember these people and be inspired by their actions. And we just wanted to share this instead of hiding it in the hallway over the Joint Budget Committee. So thank you very much.
Senator Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, members, for your dedication and time this morning to looking at this important resolution. I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize my brother, who's a firefighter in Pueblo, and the Pueblo firefighters, who are part of Local 3, which is the third oldest in the nation. But I especially want to thank you for your selflessness that you display every day, 365 days a year. So thank you for your service to not only Colorado, but this great nation. And congratulations on 100 years.
Senator Hill.
Thanks, Mr. President. Colleagues, just in light of the unifying power of ritual and the formality of that, Mr. President, we renew our request for the passage of Senate Joint Resolution 6 and ask for a roll call vote.
Motion for the body is the adoption of Senate Joint Resolution 6. Roll call vote has been requested. Mr. Carpenter, would you please call the roll?
Senators Aguilar, excused. Baumgardner. Baumgardner, aye. Cook. Cook, aye. Quorum. Quorum, aye. Court. Court, aye. Crowder. Crowder, aye. Donovan. Donovan, aye. Finberg. Finberg, aye. Fields, excused. Garcia.
Aye.
Garcia, aye. Gardner. Gardner, aye. Guzman. Guzman, aye. Hill.
Aye.
Hill, aye. Holbert. Holbert, aye. John. John, aye. Jones. Jones, aye. Kagan. Kagan, aye. Gafalis. Gafalis, aye. Kerr. Kerr, aye. Lambert. Lambert, aye. Lumberg. Lumberg, aye. Marble. Marble, aye. Martinez Humenick. Martinez Humenick, aye. Merrifield. Merrifield, aye. Moreno. Moreno, aye. Neville. Neville, aye. Priola. Priola, aye. Scott. Scott, aye. Smallwood. Smallwood, aye. Sonnenberg. Sonnenberg, aye. Tate. Tate, aye. Todd. Todd, aye. Williams. Williams, aye. Zinzinger. Zenzinger. Aye. Mr. President.
Aye.
Mr. President. Aye.
With 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, Senate Joint Resolution 6 is adopted. Senator Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I request that the current roll call be listed as co-sponsors.
Without objection, the current roll call will be added as co-sponsor. Senator Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, please join me in welcoming the firefighters who are here on behalf of us today and joining us. Please welcome them.
Thank you for being with us today. Much appreciated. Colleagues, we also have another guest in the chamber. Please welcome our former colleague, the Honorable Senator and Majority Leader Mark Hillman. Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for a round of applause.
That's all for you, Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Mr. That was for me.
We'll wait just a moment, Mr. Assistant Majority Leader. It's okay. Now, Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I apologize for that applause from myself. It does happen when I come to the well, though. So, Mr. President, I move the consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar be laid over till March 1st, 2018.
The motion is to lay over the consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar till March 1st. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that will lay over. Signing of bills.
The President has signed Senate Bill 25, 34, 54, and 67. The President has signed Senate Joint Resolution 5. The President has signed House Bill 1144, 1159, 1160, 1161, 1162, 1163, 1164, 1166, 1167, 1168, 1169, 1170, House Joint Resolution 1011.
Delivered to the Governor.
To the Governor for signature on Tuesday, February 27, 2018 at 3 p.m. Senate Bill 25, 34, 54, and 67.
Announcements. Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues in the Finance Committee, please note that we do have a schedule change for tomorrow. We will be also, in addition to Senate Bill 167, we will also be hearing Senate Bill 1 on adjournment.
Senator Todd. Todd. Senator Court.
Thank you, Mr. President. Of course, you know, I could be mistaken.
Could be. Could be, Senators.
Colleagues, you all received this announcement about the Public Investment Caucus on your desks today, and I would encourage you to come. We discuss tomorrow the work of the use of COPs and how they work and how they don't work and what they're all about in Colorado. Tomorrow, Thursday at noon, please let my aide know if you would like to come. Lunch will be served.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have an announcement and an introduction. The announcement is that Senate Bill 59 will not be heard in Judiciary this afternoon, but will be laid over to a time next week due to the excused absence of the sponsor. And the introduction is of a member of my immediate family who's present in the chamber this morning. My daughter, who makes her living as a simple country lawyer in Colorado Springs, Laura Gardner.
Senator Williams.
Thank you, Mr. President. And members, I want to remind you that the Colorado Beverage Association is having their annual legislative reception this evening. It'll be from 5:30 to 7:30 at the University Club, and all are invited. Thank you.
Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today in the Senate Committee on Business and Labor, a little difference. We're going to be meeting at 1:30 today instead of 2. And we're meeting across the street in LSB, not upstairs. So Senate business, 1:30 today, LSB, be there, be square.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President, and may I also...
Todd.
Court, Todd, whatever.
No. That's what I said. No, it's...
So Senator Todd and I, the good senator from Aurora, would like to welcome today all of the individuals and their families that are here on behalf of Rare Disease Day here at Colorado. They have their day. It's called an organization called Rare Colorado, and they're here to be a united voice in order to support and represent the needs and challenges of individuals living with rare diseases and their families. We have a couple that are here on the floor with us today, as well as many that will be wandering throughout the halls, hoping to have an opportunity to talk with their legislators and to really share with you all their experiences with having a rare disease.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do want to reiterate what my good friend from Jefferson County just talked about. This morning, we had an opportunity to listen to doctors, parents, community leaders that are advocates for rare disease. And listening to the impact of what these different diseases have on their families, on the insurance or the lack thereof, and the care that they can or cannot receive. And so you might see people wandering around the Capitol, and if you do and you see a little button like this, it is about caring about all of our citizens. And I'm going to break the rules, but I want to introduce Jude. And so Jude, if you will wave to everybody here. Jude was one of our young men and his mom that were with us this morning, and he suffers from Prader-Willi's, which I know that that is something that we have heard and talked about a little bit at the Capitol. So, Mr. President, I thank you for letting me break the rules and be able to recognize a young man who is, and his mom, who are fighters and who are advocates for themselves. So thank you very much for being with us today.
And Senator Todd, I will give you the obligatory gavel. Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I just want to bring attention to a flyer that I had put on everybody's desk. There's Stop the Bleed tomorrow. It'll be outside the old Supreme Court chamber with classes on basic bleeding control, a good, helpful knowledge to have, possibly to save a life.
Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a recognition. I know we're recognizing firefighters today, but I want to bring a little clarity to this chamber, and I'd like to introduce Weld County Sheriff's Corporal, who happens to be coming down here just to learn the process. He became a U.S. citizen about a couple years ago, and now he's the Press Information Officer for Weld County, and I wish I had the opportunity to work with him. So please welcome Francisco.
Senator Marvel.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is just to announce State Affairs will not be meeting on Monday, the 5th of March. Everything has been moved to the Wednesday, the 7th of March. So we are free and clear on Monday. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other announcements? Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we adjourn the Senate until March 1st, which is a Thursday, 2018, at 9 a.m.
9 a.m. The motion is for the Senate to adjourn until 9 a.m. Thursday, March 1st. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and we will stand in adjournment.